Today we are going to explore the unsolved mystery Iceberg. We are just starting tier 3, and for those who haven't seen the previous videos, we are going to be exploring stuff like unsolved murders and disappearances to terrifying space and quantum mysteries. And things just get darker and weirder the deeper we go. So without further ado, grab a drink. My choice today is chai tea, and join me as we explore the unsolved mystery Iceberg. So to start off tier 3, we have Fond My Mind. This is the nickname essentially given to a song by an unknown artist in the 80s. This song circulated on many forums aiming to identify it, but nobody has so far. It sounds European, but apparently in the 80s and 90s, it was quite popular for Brazilian bands to fake being European in order to get more hits, as the European style was more popular in Brazil at the time. Some people say their parents recognize this band as being a tiny local band that they remember hearing like 40 years ago, but nothing has been confirmed. 144 mysterious flying objects. This is a reference to a report by the Director of National Intelligence. In the report, it said that out of 144 flying objects spotted between 2004 and 2021, the US government can't explain 143 of them. That's like all except one, which was probably just a balloon or something. The report doesn't mention aliens or extraterrestrials or crafts, but out of the 143 that they can't explain, there's got to be at least like 20 alien crafts flying around. At least. Maybe 21. The 3X murders. On June 11th, 1930, Joseph Mosinski and Catherine May were sitting together in a parked car in Queens, New York. A man approached the vehicle, shot Joseph dead, and handed Catherine a note. The instructions said not to open the note until the following day, and the man then walked Catherine to a nearby bus stop and left her there unharmed. She didn't report the murder straight away, but soon Joseph was found, and they contacted Catherine as her coat was in the car. She met with police and told them what happened, and gave them the note which she had received, which just read Joseph Mosinski, 3X097. The police had no leads, but a few days later, a letter was sent to a local newspaper. The writer of this letter claimed to be the killer and said that Joseph was a rascal and a dirty little rat, and 14 more of his friends will soon join him. Just 5 days later, another man was killed in very similar circumstances. Nick Sowley and Elizabeth Ring were sitting in a parked car in, again, Queens, New York, when a man approached the car and asked for Nick's driver's license. He then said, "You're the guy we want, all right. You're gonna get what Joe got." And he shot him dead. He then took Elizabeth to a bus stop, gave her a note, and then vanished. The next day, another newspaper received a letter saying that 13 more men and 1 woman will go. 4 days after this, Joseph Mosinski's brother received a letter in which the writer threatened to kill him if he didn't return those papers. What those papers were referring to, we don't know. Shortly after this, authorities received another letter saying that he, the killer, was an agent of the Red Diamond of Russia, and that Joseph and Nick were former agents in the same organization. He said that they had turned against the Red Diamond of Russia and stolen important documents when they left. But since they had now been returned, the mission has ended and there is no further cause of worry. 3X is no more. The killings stopped after this, but the letters continued. But police couldn't determine whether these were fake letters or if they were actually written by the original killer. Amber Hagerman. This was the sad case of a 9-year-old girl who was grabbed off her bike as she was kicking and screaming and thrown into the back of a black truck in the parking lot of an abandoned Winn-Dixie. This was in 1996, and she was found dead just 4 days later in a creek 4 miles away. The only description of the man who did this was that he was either white or Hispanic, in his 20s to 30s, under 6 foot tall, with black or brown hair. And although there were over 7,000 leads, no one was charged or convicted. After this extremely heartbreaking event, Amber's mother worked day and night to build a system that was eventually called the Amber System, which stood for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, and was made to rapidly alert first local and then national people, communities, and areas after a child goes missing. In 2020, the Amber Alert System reached its 1,000th child saved and continues to find missing children all over the country. So an absolutely awful case, but Amber Amber's mum did do great work in helping to ensure that this sort of thing happens a lot less often. The Angel of the Meadow was a woman found in Angel Meadow, England, 2010. She was covered up by a blue carpet and had a broken neck and a fractured jaw. Judging by her clothes and how much the body had decomposed, investigators estimated her birth date to be somewhere in the 1950s, having been killed sometime in the 1970s or 80s, meaning she was under that blue carpet for 30 to 40 years before being found. She was never identified, so sadly the Angel of the Meadow remains a Jane Doe. The B1 Butcher was an unidentified serial killer, responsible for at least 9 murders in Namibia, South Africa. This was between 2005 and 2007, and the killer got their name from the media due to all the bodies being found near the National B1 Road. And the butcher part of it was because the bodies were all found dismembered. 2 of the 5 women killed could not be identified, and they were all found in garbage bags, 1 body part at a time. The bodies also showed signs of freezing, suggesting that the killer had used some sort of freezer or refrigeration, either before, during, or after killing these women. In 2007, a German citizen in Namibia was arrested under suspicion of assaulting a 29-year-old Namibian woman, and later he was accused of being the B1 Butcher, but he was released after 3 years for a lack of evidence. And since then, no more bodies attributed to the B1 Butcher have been found, and no one has been charged for the murders. The Backyardigans Pilot is a reference to the lost pilot for the animated series for Nick Jr., the Backyardigans. The Backyardigans premiered in 2004, but this lost pilot was made in 2002. The animation was in a different style than what eventually became of the Backyardigans, and the plot of the pilot was apparently similar to a later episode, The Heart of the Jungle, but we only have a single second of the footage of the pilot available, as it was shown on a Nick Jr. advert for new up-and-coming shows. And so the rest of the pilot is, for now, lost media. The Badge Man is another suspicious figure that was present during the JFK assassination. His name comes from the reflection of something on his chest, which some people suggest may have been a badge of sorts, which has led people to think that he might have been dressed as a police officer. There are theories suggesting that he was a sniper, firing at the president from the grassy knoll, and other theories saying that the image isn't a person at all, but a trick of the light or a distorted Coke bottle or something. The Warren Commission, which was responsible for investigating JFK's assassination, didn't find anything suspicious in the photograph, because of course they didn't. And the true nature of the Badge Man remains to this day a mystery. The Barber Paradox is a puzzle or question that puts forward the following scenario. By the given definition, this hypothetical barber is the one who shaves all those and those only who don't shave themselves. And the question is, does the barber shave himself? Any answer you give to this question will be a contradiction. If he does shave himself, then he is shaving someone who shaves themselves, which contradicts his definition. And if he doesn't shave himself, then he fits into the definition of ones he shaves, and so he must shave himself. It's a bit nonsensical and a little bit tricky, and as some have pointed out, it's kind of a loaded question, as you're assuming the existence of something or someone who can't logically even exist. So of course there will be a paradox, but that's logic for you. The Beaumont children were 3 kids, Jane, Anna, and Grant Beaumont, who went missing in 1966 from the Glenelg Beach in southern Australia. The 3 kids, aged 9, 7, and 4, took a 5-minute bus ride from their home to the nearby Glenelg Beach. This was in the morning, and when they hadn't returned home 3 hours later, their dad drove to the beach to look for them. When he couldn't find them, he called the police, and there was a massive search of the beach and the surrounding area done, but the kids weren't found. Their main suspect was an unidentified man whom people had seen speaking and playing with the children before they went missing. He was tanned, slim to athletic, and wearing swim trunks. Apparently the 3 kids seemed to be having fun, so nobody at the beach really took any notice of it. The man then went off to change, came back, and him and the 3 children left together, never to be seen again. There were a bunch of different suspects, but one by one they were all ruled out, and the 3 kids and their abductor were never found. but this still remains an open case, and there still remains a $1 million reward for information leading to the solving of this case. Bible John was an unidentified serial killer responsible for murdering 3 women in 1968 and 9, Glasgow, Scotland. The victims were all young women with brown hair between the ages of 25 and 32, and he met all of his victims in the Barrowland Ballroom, which was a dance hall in the city. This was one of the largest, most extensive manhunts in all of Scottish history, and was the first time that the Scottish government allowed the publication of a drawing of someone suspected of murder. He was dubbed Bible John based on the fact that he repeatedly quoted from the Bible and condemned any sort of adultery while he was with his final victim. There were more than 100 detectives working full-time on this case, and more than 5,000 potential suspects were interviewed at the time. The head detective of the case said in 1972, "It is quite incredible that this man has eluded us. I am positive this man comes from Glasgow or nearby. He is between 25 and 30, between 5'10" and 6 feet tall, has light red hair, good features, blue-grey eyes, and a smart modern appearance. I do not think he is a very religious man, but just has a normal, intelligent working knowledge of the Bible, which he likes to air. There must be many people who know someone who looks like this artist's impression." But despite the massive search and investigation, Bible John was never found and to this day remains unidentified. Planets. Yes, I said planets. These are a hypothetical class of exoplanets that directly orbit black holes. Like planets, they have enough mass to force themselves into a round shape, and in 2019, astronomers showed that there is a safe zone around a supermassive black hole that could potentially harbor thousands of planets, all orbiting around it. Because this one is quite short, I'll just add that supermassive black holes is actually the technical name for the largest classification of black holes. And in fact, most galaxies have a supermassive black hole at their center, which the entire galaxy is orbiting around. These black holes tend to be between 100,000 and a few billion times the mass of our sun. Terrifying. Boat hounds are fearsome critters from lumberjack folklore, which I didn't even know was a thing. They circulated in the early 1900s and are said to sleep at the bottom of lakes during the day, and during the night the creatures rise and look around for boats that aren't tied up, and they swallow the boats whole. They look like a long boat with flipper-like feet, and they have 4 ears, 2 for listening forward and 2 for listening backwards. It also has a huge alligator-like mouth, and I'm not gonna lie, this kind of reminds me of the Beast from Father Ted.
They say it's as big as 4 cats, and it's got a retractable leg so as it can leap up at you better. It lights up at night. It's got 4 ears, 2 of them are for listening and the other 2 are kind of backup ears. Its claws are as big as cups, and for some reason it's got a tremendous fear of stamps. It's got magnets on its tail, so as if you're made out of metal, it can attach itself to you. And instead of a mouth, it's got 4 arses.
But boat hounds will be boat hounds. The Bouvet Island Lifeboat. So Bouvet Island is one of the most remote, desolate places on the planet. Its nearest landmass is Antarctica, and it was first discovered in 1739. And it was then lost for 69 years due to 1, being misplaced on the map, and 2, being just incredibly difficult to find as it was. It is an incredibly cold and inhospitable place, and has thick sea mist and storms for roughly 300 days a year. Over the years, in the 1900s, there were more and more visits to the island, mainly from Norwegian and South African ships. One visit in 1964 took the South Africans to the island, and after waiting for 3 days for the whirlwinds to drop, they attempted to land their helicopter. But what they found offshore was baffling. A small abandoned lifeboat floating around against the shore. There were no markings on the boat to identify it, and on the rocks only a few hundred yards away was a 44-gallon drum and a pair of oars. There were also pieces of wood and a copper flotation or buoyancy tank that had been opened up flat for some purpose. So naturally they thought someone has shipwrecked her, but after an extensive search, they found no human bodies or remains. The boat arrived sometime between the 2 visits of 1955 and 1964, and came from a larger fishing or seaboat, but that's all that they could determine. The fact that no bodies were found, and the fact that the boat wasn't taken up and used as shelter, goes toward the theory that the boat simply fell off a ship and washed up here. But the wood collection and the very basic camp found nearby goes completely against that theory. So there seems to be conflicting evidence no matter what side you take. Who owned the boat, where it came from, and what happened to the crew who had collected the wood and made the camp, we to this day have no idea. Brittany Phillips was an 18-year-old girl found dead in her apartment in Tulsa, 2004. She was assaulted and then killed, and was found roughly 3 days later by police after being called by a friend of Brittany after she went to check on her and noticed something odd. She was buried on her 19th birthday, and sadly no one has been charged for her murder. But as with a surprising amount of these lately, just this year new evidence was uncovered, which may give a more accurate timeline of Brittany's final moments, and may hopefully bring us closer to finding out who killed her. The Cambrian Explosion was a very mysterious time in Earth's history, where around 530 million years ago, there was a huge boom in the evolution and diversity of animals in a relatively short period of time. Before the Cambrian era, most organisms were simple. They were either single-celled or small multi-celled organisms. Practically all of the major animal phyla that all of our modern animals evolved from came from that one explosion in time. It was thought to have been caused by many factors, not just one, and these factors aren't exhaustive, but I'll go through some of the theories that have been floated around. A rising sea level. So it is thought that after a rise in the sea levels, it flooded many low areas of land and created a bunch of shallow seas, which, at least in today's world, are areas that are absolutely teeming with life. The flooding would have also helped shift around and release various nutrients, such as phosphate and calcium, which would have helped with growing hard shells in the evolving life forms. There was almost 3 times the amount of calcium after the start of the Cambrian period than before it, and because of this, it is thought that a arms race of sorts started between animals using the calcium defensively, like turtles, and animals using it offensively, for stuff like teeth or horns. This rapid back and forth competition may have led to several species evolving faster than they normally would, which catapulted the modern and rapid evolution of these animals. But the definitive cause for one of life's most important events has yet to be fully figured out. Cattle mutilation is the mutilation of cattle. No, but seriously, this is a phenomenon observed among both livestock and wild animals, where they are found with a removed body part, often an ear, eye, tongue, or genitalia, in an almost surgical, bloodless manner. This has been reported as far back as the 1600s, and there have been many theories about this one over the years. These range from predators to poachers, underground cults to secret government operations, and cryptid creatures such as the Chupacabra to aliens. And if you know me, you know where I stand on this one. Charlie Chopoff was the name given to an unidentified serial killer who killed 4 children in Manhattan between 1972 and 1973. He was named this because all of his victims were boys, and they all had their you-know-what chopped off. Pretty gruesome stuff, and this guy was an absolute monster. And after a failed abduction of a boy in 1974, a man called Erno Soto was arrested by the police. He admitted to the killing of one of the boys, but none of the others. And his only surviving victim said that he looked like his attacker, but that he couldn't positively identify him. Erno was an intermittent patient at a Manhattan mental hospital, and officials at the hospital said that Soto was under their custody during the times of the killings, but later admitted that he might have evaded their custody, as he had done so before. He was sent back to the mental hospital, and is still the investigators' main suspect, as the killings did stop when he was taken away, but due to him being in a mental hospital, it is thought that it is unlikely that he will stand trial for these killings. Chip Campbell. This was a case of a 36-year-old man who went missing in Florida 2016. He was caught on the security footage of a Circle K gas station station, and then never seen again. He had been battling with depression, loneliness, and addiction for most of his life, and had a really rough upbringing in terms of people around him either abandoning him or dying when he apparently needed them the most. But he never took it out on anyone else. He was a gentle giant, as a lot of people described him as, and often punished himself far more than anyone else. He was seen on the security footage walking to the back bathroom of this particular gas station carrying 2 backpacks. When he left, he had neither backpack, and what was in those backpacks led to an even greater mystery. On March 8, Chip's roommate, Tanya Rios, couldn't find Chip, so she made a Facebook post asking if anyone had seen him. His home was in a complete mess. His phone was found in the bathroom with its battery ripped out, and he hadn't taken any of his insulin, which is kind of important when you have diabetes. When Tanya first arrived, the front door was wedged shut, the side door was wide open, as was the fridge, and vials of Chip's insulin were all over the kitchen floor. There was a duffel bag full of clothes packed in Chip's room, which he had apparently left, and Chip's dog was roaming free around the house, something that apparently Chip would never allow. So police got involved, they started the search, and this led them to the security footage at the gas station and to Chip and the 2 backpacks. In the first backpack was a bunch of documents: Chip's EBT card, social security card, a copy of his dad's birth certificate, and 2 blank bank deposit forms. He also had some medical supplies like a diabetic testing kit, a single vial of insulin, and an inhaler for his asthma. In the second backpack was some clothing, some food, and some supplies: pencils, pens, a rope, and a steel blow dart. So the family started looking around for anyone who might have influenced gentle giant Chip into running away and going down this dark path. And naturally, they first looked to his roommate, Tanya. There are a lot of details in this case, so I'll just quickly go through them. They found that Tanya actually had a warrant out for her arrest in a neighboring county, and after posting bail and returning to the house, Chip's family wanted her out from there. Tanya wasn't paying rent, and the house actually belonged to Chip's dad, Reggie. It took a while to get her to leave as she was claiming squatters' rights, but during that time they also found out that someone was forging checks in the name of Chip's father, Reggie, and his account was now overdrawn. This someone would later turn out to be Tanya. She was arrested again, and when the family went back to their home, they noticed that it was a complete dump. Plates and bowls were smashed, a bunch of these spoons were filthy and bent, and everything else was covered in filth. The home had apparently been used as a drug den for months. This is while Chip was living there. They later also found a makeshift meth lab in the attic, and after all of this, Chip's body was never found. Tanya was never charged with anything related to Chip's disappearance or death, and Chip's family eventually cleaned the entire house back to how it originally was. It's still unknown whether Chip was killed, maybe to stop him telling someone about the drug and fraud operation that was going on, or whether he went off intentionally. The fact that he left all of his insulin behind really doesn't look good, but to this day, gentle giant Chip's fate is unknown. Christopher Morris. This was an 11-year-old boy found dead in a dishwasher in Texas 2000. Christopher's dad came home from work one day and found his son mutilated, naked, and stuffed in a dishwasher. This was a really messed up case, and there's honestly not much online about it, but sadly, after hundreds of interviews and thousands of hours of investigations, Christopher's killer has still not been found. Cicada 3301 was the name given to 3 sets of puzzles posted online between 2012 and 2014. The first round of puzzles ran for nearly a month, with the second beginning a year later and the third a year after that. The third puzzle has not to this day been solved, and the puzzle's stated intent was to recruit intelligent individuals. They focused heavily on data security, cryptography, steganography, and internet anonymity. The creator of these puzzles has never been revealed, and many speculate that they were recruitment tools for the NSA, CIA, MI6, a cult of some sort, or a cyber mercenary group. They haven't posted a puzzle since 2015, and the, some would argue, bigger puzzle of who Cicada 3301 was has never been solved. Colleen Wood was a 53-year-old mother of 2 who went missing without a trace in Florida 2000. There was no body, no note from her, no sign of a struggle or foul play. She was just there one second and gone the next. She was dating at the time former professional race driver John Lee Paul, and months after she disappeared, he also mysteriously vanished. John was a bigwig in the finance world, being a Wall Street investor sort of guy, and Colleen told him that she had always wanted to sail around the world. It was her dream since before she could remember. So John said, yeah, let's do it. And Colleen sold everything she had and went on this trip with John on his boat, the Island Girl. The last person to speak with her was Maureen Canada. This was on December 14th. And Colleen said that she was at a bar in Key West with John and that she was having a grand old time. After this, she was never heard from or seen again. The family later found out that John had actually done time in prison after he started a drug smuggling ring and tried to kill his partner in crime. He had served 15 years for this and was actually still on parole. So his plans with Colleen to sail around the world would completely violate his parole and wasn't something he could even legally do. After Colleen's disappearance, John said that he and Colleen had broken up in December and that he hadn't seen her since. Investigators found that Colleen's cards had withdrawn over $40,000 in Fort Lauderdale between December and February, and evidence showed that she wasn't the one making these withdrawals. The police said that it was multiple different women making the withdrawals, and these women weren't Colleen and obviously weren't John, and so Colleen was never found. After a while of investigating, authorities tried to bring John in for questioning, but found that he had apparently left town on his boat, violating his parole, and he has been missing ever since. He had been known to sail across the Atlantic on several occasions, so where he is on his boat right now is anybody's guess. Coronal heating. So say you're near a campfire. It's pretty hot, so you move away and it gets cooler. This is quite normal, but it's not how it works on the sun. The surface of the sun is roughly 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty hot, but the sun's upper atmosphere, which is a lot closer to us, burns at an incredible several million degrees, 500 times hotter than its surface. Scientists think that there must be certain reactions going on in the sun's upper atmosphere that leads to this level of heat generation, but we don't know for sure, and it is currently a mystery. The Cowden family. Richard and Belinda Cowden and their 2 children, David and Melissa, went missing from a campground in the Siskiyou Mountains in Oregon 1974. Belinda's mother first discovered that they were missing when she went to check on them where they were staying and found everything as if they had just walked out. There was food prepared and Richard's wallet and wristwatch were just lying on the floor. So Belinda's mum called the police. Their disappearance resulted in one of the largest search efforts ever in Oregon, and their bodies were found 7 months later, 11 kilometers from their campsite. They had died from being shot with .22 caliber bullets, and police did strongly suspect a man named Dwayne Lee Little, who was a convicted killer. He was on parole around the time that the Cowdens were killed. He owned a .22 caliber gun, and they were able to determine that he was nearby the campgrounds on the weekend that the family went missing. But partly because the evidence was circumstantial, and because he was already serving 3 life sentences, he was never convicted for these murders, and to this day they remain technically unsolved. The Dare Stones. So to explain this one, we need to go back to 1587 England. A woman named Eleanor White Dare was a member of the colony of North Carolina in what eventually became the United States. She was married to a stonecarver named Ananias Dare, and she gave birth to Virginia, the first ever child born in North America to English parents. This family, along with everyone else in the colony, now dubbed the Lost Colony, mysteriously disappeared when her father had gone back to England to get supplies for the colony. Then, in the 1930s, 48 stones were found in North Georgia and North and South Carolina. These were named the Dare Stones, as they told the story of what happened to the lost colony while Eleanor's father was in England. The first stone tells of the death of Eleanor's daughter and husband at the hands of the natives in 1591. Each of these stones was addressed to John White, Eleanor's father, and each was signed off with Eleanor's name. The stones gave the direction direction that the colony had gone in and called for revenge against the savage natives. A stone dated to 1592 indicated that the surviving members of the colony had reached a sanctuary in the Nakuchi Valley area and had actually lived there for a while. Another stone from 1598 indicated that Eleanor had married the leader of the tribe there, and a stone dated to 1599 announced Eleanor's death, indicating that she had left behind a daughter named Agnes. Some historians have labeled all the stones except the first one as a hoax, but others, including myself, like to think that these stones are real and that they map the true journey and tale of the lost colony. I will just say, if you are enjoying the video, do please give it a like, and if you'd like to keep up with the rest of this iceberg, do hit the subscribe and bell buttons to ensure that you do not miss any future episodes. Dennis Martin was a 6-year-old boy who went missing in 1969, Tennessee. This was in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and he was hiking with his family when his father saw him hide behind a bush. Apparently, Dennis was looking to wait there and jump out at his other family members as they came by, but after not seeing him for about 5 minutes, his father went around the bush to look for him, and he was nowhere to be seen. His family ran in all directions and searched for a while before getting help from the park rangers. It was the biggest search in the park's history, involving more than 1,400 searches and covering over 56 square miles. They found a child's footprints, with one foot being the type of shoe that Dennis was wearing, and the other one being barefoot. Barefoot as in he didn't have a shoe on, not like an actual bear's foot. These prints led to a stream and then ended. Dennis was sadly never found, and the park officials believe that he likely just became lost and died from exposure. But others believe that he was either attacked by a bear and carried off, or he was abducted by someone and taken from the park. Diogenes Honest Man. Diogenes the Cynic was a man who lived in a barrel for most of his life outside the city-state of Corinth in the 4th century BC. He was kind of an ancient hippie and thought that no one could be completely truthful or honest, as they were dictated by and slaves to rules and taboos. He was known to wander around ancient Greece with a lantern, searching for an honest man. He was named a cynic because he didn't believe that anyone could be truly honest, and yet he was always searching for an honest man. It is thought that maybe because he and his father were accused of stealing money from the minting house that they worked in, that he was trying to prove that no honest man existed, and so the accusations against him were meaningless. Or maybe he was a cynic who was just a disappointed idealist, and deep down he believed that he would one day find a truly honest man. But nobody knows why he, as a cynic, was always searching for an honest man, and no one truly knows whether he ended up actually finding one. The disciple whom Jesus loved was a phrase used 6 times in the Gospel of John. It is not mentioned in any other New Testament account of Jesus, and to this day, nobody knows what disciple this is referring to. There are a few different theories about who this might be, but nothing concrete. And that, I'm afraid, is all we have time for. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you do not miss the rest of this series. Check out our Discord if you haven't already. I will see you all super soon in the next one, and as always guys, thanks for watching.